What's up, folks, and welcome back to Practical Perspectives. Today I'm pumped. I got my pan feeling strong. I'm excited about today's topic, and today's topic is breaking the law versus committing a crime. What is the difference? How does it work? And how can an outcome be determined by the difference between the two? And today's topic happens to be the Kyle Rittenhouse edition because I was scrolling across the post from somebody that's on my friends list on Facebook, and we're going to leave names out of it. But when I saw this post, I couldn't help but laugh at the ignorance of this whole thing. And as you will see, it's a post that she shared from Jeffrey Knight, who's supposedly a lawyer and all this good snaz. But what it breaks down to is you can tell if this person was really so experienced, how did a nobody like me just poke a huge ass hole in his logic with simplicity? Now, I will say right off the bat, this is a disclaimer that I am, in fact, no lawyer of any kind. But I do have a good, solid foundation understanding for law, and I am, in fact, an expert on technicalities and cause and effect. That, with my ability to use logic and reasoning, I was able to destroy this liberal lawyer's logic with ease. Okay, now first, I want to show you this guy's post, and then I want to read to you my response. And then afterwards, I'll explain it and go into greater detail. But I thoroughly enjoyed this, and I'm really excited to share this with you folks. And because here's the thing, a lot of people don't know the law, they don't know their rights, they don't know technicalities, and a lot of times it causes them to get themselves into trouble when they never should have been in first place. But the problem is, TV media, they use certain terms too loosely, and they get people to embrace these terms in a broader sense where they don't belong. And then, long story short, they end up using it to their advantage down the road in legal situations. And I'm going to show you some examples of that. And as I mentioned in my response, this is very comparable to people not knowing the difference between driving and traveling. That in which I'm going to have to do an entirely separate video on, but it is very fascinating, and you would be surprised how much trouble people could really save themselves if they just knew their rights and they knew basic law. Period. So without further ado, we're going to go right into this. And okay, first of all, here we go from Larry Knight. Now, right off the bat, we can see here that Larry Knight, he claims to be a military legal worker, which this, right off the bat, on a side note, is completely ironic to me because if he is truly in this type of position and associated with the military, unless they have some kind of personal agenda, then they should more than understand the importance of people and their rights and the rights to bear arm and to defend themselves. He should be advocating and supporting that, which is really bizarre to me. Okay, so we see here I'm seeing a lot of ignorance and misinformation flying around about what's happened in Kenosha, and I'm going to set the record straight from a professional legal position, as well as a former military position. I'm going to explain some things from a more technical angle derived from my many years as a paralegal and from my experience working in the federal criminal justice and prosecution. Okay, right there's another red flag. He's a prosecutor. They find ways to manipulate people to prosecute them in any way a possible way that they can. It's just a part of the generating revenue scheme that our courts really do in the long run. So I find that to be interesting too. Legally, if you are in the process of a commission of a crime, it negates your ability to claim self-defense if you kill someone, as in it can't even be entered as your official defense in court. It is similar to getting rear-ended at a red light through zero fault of your own. But if you were driving without a license or insurance, it would automatically makes you at fault because you weren't even legally allowed to be driving. And again, this is another topic that we're going to have to exclusively cover in another video, because that topic alone I can also flip right on top of his head. And I'm going to. That 17-year-old in Kenosha had committed 2 crimes and was not even legally allowed to open carry the rifle he used to shoot three people. This means that he legally cannot claim self-defense. However, it is not to protect your property. It is for protecting your life. And once the burglar, for instance, has left your home, the threat to your life is considered neutralized, and deadly force is no longer authorized. So if a burglar runs out the door and down the street with your TV, you are no longer allowed to shoot them because they are not threatening your life. You call the police, you file a claim with your insurance, and you get a new TV. If you shoot a burglar in the back down the street, you can and should be charged with a murder. I want to take this opportunity to address another position on this. And they're saying there's a difference between defending person and defending property. Now, just because it is known that he was trying to go there to keep the peace, he was trying to protect people's properties, people's assets. Okay? We know this. But they're trying to use that and say that he was using a gun to protect people's property, which this is not the case. They cleverly rewrapped and repackaged that situation to make it look like he was defending somebody's property, when in reality, he was going there to protect somebody's property, which he can do with or without a gun. Okay, by other means. What he used the gun for is to protect himself. There's a difference. But they're trying to make it look like he was using that gun solely to go there and cause trouble. While you are out in public, this means a lot of things, obviously. It means that there is far more scrutiny and boxes that must be checked in order to claim self-defense. You must be in imminent danger of losing a life limb, getting into an argument, and feeling scared of being punched by an unarmed person. Not like to be a situation where deadly force is authorized. You must retreat. Okay, that's another problem. There were witnesses and testimony of the assailants making it clear that they wanted to kill Kyle Rittenhouse. It's not that Kyle Rittenhouse was scared of being punched in the face. He was advised by the assailants that he sought to take his life. Might be important. And of course, he goes on to say, if someone shoots at you or pulls a knife on you in the street, that is deadly force and can be met with deadly force. But if the person is unarmed, you cannot shoot them because you're afraid of a little scuffle. That is why Rittenhouse illegally shot the first protester, and it is one of the many reasons it can't be considered self-defense. Man threw in a plastic bag with a trash in it at him and missed. Rittenhouse shot him. He chased his victims and instigated a fight by brandishing and flagging people with his rifle because he is an untrained idiot with a gun. The protester was not a threat, and even if he was, all he had to do was retreat back to the police line. He rushed all the protesters with a gun, drawn back to pick a fight, and people are acting as if he was just there to keep the peace. That's because he was there to keep the peace. Okay, he fired into a crowd, and it's a miracle he didn't hit more people. More people that hadn't thrown a plastic bag, more people that were just trying to protest the police brutality, which is a real issue in this country. Okay, pause, because mind you, he's using police brutality as justification for these people going out there acting like assholes and burning down buildings and stuff like that. When the police brutality, this whole situation was over, reference to the George Floyd incident, which even the medical autopsy clearly proved there was no police brutality involved. Facts: George Floyd had hypertension. Facts: George Floyd had swallowed methamphetamines. Right off the bat, if you have any knowledge of medical and drugs, first of all, hypertension means you got a bad heart and high blood pressure to begin with. What does meth do? It skyrockets your blood pressure and causes heart problems anyway, but that's beside the point. Plus, he swallowed fentanyl, respiratory suppressant, opiate. It was clear to the videos prior to the man even getting on the ground. When he was standing up, he was claiming he was having a hard time breathing. That's because his heart was failing. That's why if you go check yourself into a hospital complaining of chest pains, the first thing they're going to ask you is if you're having shortness of breath. Why? Shortness of breath is related to heart failure, chest pain, so forth. This man, he was already dying. He was on death's bed, and nobody knew it. The cops didn't know what he had swallowed, and they didn't know what was going on with him internally. They didn't know his medical condition. But the fact of the matter is, they're saying police brutality when the autopsy says there's no bruising inside or outside of the skin, and there is no evidence to support that trauma was caused by the police putting his knee on his neck. So the police brutality that they're referencing wasn't even a thing. So that's just how wild this thing is. They're using something that that happened that was completely manipulated to further stretch your point here. So keep that in mind. And also, I didn't see any footage of him firing off into the crowd. Every shot he had a particular target. And this is not, and they're trying to make it out to like he was just recklessly spraying fire out into the crowds, trying to get anybody who can in the process. God, you guys try way too hard. I could further dissect the situation, but for now, I'm going to end with people passing around misinformation about the victims being criminals, and so they deserved it. Which that part is also irrelevant. without reading all of it, he basically goes on to say that there's no records or no proof that anybody was a pedophile, and the right wing extremists are making up stuff about the victims, excuse me, are making up stuff up about the victims so he could justify shooting them. And that's what the rest of this boils down to. Okay, so it basically finishes this off by saying that he's not brainwashed by the left and he's not brainwashed by the mainstream media and this, that, and the third. Which is weird because he has an identical agenda. But, okay, so let me break this down for you. There is a fine line between breaking a law and committing a crime, as you're about to see by my response to this post. Okay, and I think this gets really interesting, and I'm trying not to lose you guys, but it does get a little complicated, so bear with me. My response to this person was, this is completely null and void from the rip. First of all, Kyle was not, and I repeat, was not committing a crime before or during the attempted assault, as the crime is defined as to cause loss or damage to others' person or property. Okay? So that addresses that guy's entire argument from the very get go, because his argument was that Kyle was already in the midst of committing a crime, as he wasn't legally able to carry a gun, therefore he was committing a crime, and therefore he had no right to defend himself. Well, that is a lie. Okay, in an instance like that, is it against the law for him to have a gun? Yes, probably. I don't know the state laws where they're at. I don't know that surrounding bit of information. I'll happily admit, but in court they said that he was not legally the age to have it. Okay, fine. I don't care. The fact of the matter is, he may have broken the law, but he in fact did not commit a crime. For committing a crime would mean that he had already caused loss, hurt somebody, or destroyed something. Was he in the process of doing that when he was attacked and was forced to defend himself? Absolutely not. Okay, so let's get that out of the way. And as I just mentioned, I'm going on. And now, granted, Kyle may well have broken the law, but he in fact did not commit a crime. As committing crimes, breaking the laws aren't necessarily the same thing. You can break a law without committing a crime, but you can't commit a crime without breaking the law. There are countless ways to break the law without causing loss, damage to others' person or property without committing a crime. People like this know better, but they cause carefully crafted and camouflaged technicalities to sway their political agendas. And they rely on the ignorance of the public to not know the difference between the two. But you see this kind of stuff all the time. Just like most people don't know the simple difference between driving a motorized vehicle and traveling in your car. When you're traveling for the purpose of commerce, you are driving, just as you need a license to do anything else commercial. When you're not traveling for the purpose of commerce, you're traveling, period. But if the average Joe knew this information, circumstances surrounding a combination of an understanding of their rights, this would cause the legal systems all across the country to lose tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars annually. Be, but just the same, it boils down to the same system relying on the ignorance of their people to further its agenda. But what I find funny is no one is talking about the people protesting who weren't only breaking the law, but actually committing actual crimes by rioting, hurting people, destroying properties, and burning down buildings. Those are committing crimes. And yet the only thing anybody's seen Kyle do is cleaning up the mess and damage that the protesters caused, i.e., cleaning graffiti off buildings, so forth, providing medical aid to those who suffered injuries as a result of people who were actually committing crimes. I don't know what part of that code anybody is having trouble cracking, but that totally pokes a huge, irreparable hole in this lawyer's logic. Epic fail. So that was my response. Okay, so let's recap. This whole thing boils down to this guy making a claim that Kyle Rittenhouse had no claim to self-defense, as he was already in the process of committing a crime and therefore not allowed to defend himself. But I just clearly broke down to you what the legal definition of a crime is, which again is to cause loss, damage to person or property. And all the evidence, all the footage, everything out there, none of it indicates that Kyle Rittenhouse was at any point, let alone in the process of causing any loss, causing any harm to persons, or causing any damage to property. Anywhere, including up to the point where he was attacked. Period. Bottom line, get over it. It's plain textbook self-defense. His life was verbally threatened. They came after him. He had a legitimate reason to fear for his life, and he neutralized that threat, which he was well within his rights to do. Game over. You got owned. End of story. Bye-bye. Moral of the story is, please, know your rights, know your law. We'll see you next time.